So we have this amazing interview with Robin Van Persie, legendary footballer, talking about
Yeah.
his career and how he became such a great leader. And we're calling this deep dive Taming That Inner Fire. I think that's just such a cool way to think about his story.
It's perfect because he was so successful,
Yeah.
but he really is open about how his impulsiveness was holding him back, especially early on.
He really doesn't hold anything back, does he?
No, he doesn't.
Like, he talks about how he would constantly get into it with coaches, with other players.
Yeah.
He even says opponents would, deliberately try to provoke him
Oh, wow.
just to get him off his game. He uses this phrase, stepping on my toes, to
Mhm.
describe what they would do. Can you imagine that pressure week after week?
I mean, it's got to be draining, I would think.
Yeah, and he admits that he would get sucked in. He would react. He'd
Yeah.
get into these battles that would just take so much out of him,
Yeah.
mentally and physically.
Makes sense.
And then at some point, he has this conversation with his wife, and it becomes this turning point. And she says to him, "You have to choose your battles."
Hmm.
It's so simple, but it really resonated with him.
It's interesting that he was already a star player at this point,
Yeah.
but he was willing to, totally rethink his approach.
Yeah.
He realized, he didn't have to react to every little thing.
Right.
It's not about winning every, little argument.
Yeah.
It's the bigger picture.
It's not about those small battles.
Yeah.
He even talks about how early in his career, if he missed a chance to score,
Yeah.
he would get visibly frustrated. He'd show everyone his disappointment, and then he says,
Oh, well.
that's weakness.
Yeah.
Because he realized that by showing his frustration to his opponents, he's giving them a psychological edge.
Makes you think how often we do that without even realizing.
Right.
It takes courage to not only recognize that in yourself, but then to actually change your behavior.
Absolutely. He started practicing being composed even when things weren't going his way. Projecting strength,
Yeah.
choosing your battles is more than just the immediate situation. It's that long game.
Yeah. It sounds like that shift made a huge difference for him. He said it made the game fun again. He wasn't letting all those small things steal his energy.
I can see that.
He goes on to say that a lot of the problems he had early on stemmed from a lack of communication.
Okay.
He admits he was scared to talk to his coaches, afraid to rock the boat.
Yeah.
But over time, he realized that open dialogue was essential, not just with the coach, but with everyone on the team.
That's interesting.
He says he even wanted to hear from the kit man, the physios,
Wow.
everyone. He recognized that every member of the team has a different perspective.
Yeah.
And if you can tap into that collective wisdom, the team as a whole becomes stronger.
That's a really interesting point. He's talking about building a truly collaborative environment where everybody feels comfortable sharing their thoughts, no matter their role. Yeah. But then he goes on to say that the structure of a lot of football clubs, that really traditional top-down structure, it actually gets in the way of that kind of open communication.
Made so.
He says that some people in higher positions might resist collaboration because they feel like it threatens their own power.
Interesting. That happens everywhere, though, right?
Right.
Not just in sports.
It's about control.
Yeah.
And that leads us to another fascinating part of his evolution. That's how this emphasis on communication turned into a philosophy of freely sharing knowledge.
Even when he doesn't have a coaching position.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He talks about this idea of give to give, which he learned from Marco van Basten.
Okay.
It's about giving without expecting anything in return, just sharing because you believe it might benefit others.
It's tough to do.
He said that people actually advised him to hold back,
Really?
to protect his secrets, but he rejected that. He wants to help his former club Feyenoord progress, and he believes that sharing his knowledge is the best way to do that.
That's pretty selfless.
You get the sense that for him, it's about something bigger than just winning.
Yeah.
He says that even if someone only takes a small percentage of what he offers and applies it in their own way, he considers that a win. It's not about imposing his ideas on others. It's about offering a different perspective, a new tool for their toolbox.
It's about empowering others to learn and grow, even if they eventually surpass you. That's a certain level of self-confidence and generosity.
Yeah, it's something we can all learn from.
Sure.
Let's pause here for a moment. And in part 2, we'll explore how this philosophy of Van Persie's actually challenges the power structures, not just in football, but in so many organizations. It's interesting how Van Persie's story, goes beyond just football.
Yeah.
It's about leadership and self-awareness, things we can all relate to.
Right. And how he talks about those power structures in football clubs.
Yeah.
He's saying that they actually prevent good communication and limit the team's potential.
He even says at some clubs, players are told, Stick to playing football. As if their insights aren't valuable because they're just players.
That's had to be frustrating.
Yeah.
You know, he spent years honing his craft.
Hmm.
He's developed this deep understanding of the game.
Right.
He wants to contribute more than just, his physical skills.
Yeah.
He wants to collaborate and be a part of something bigger.
And he talked about how much he valued hearing from everyone on the team, even the kit man,
Yeah.
recognizing that every single person has a unique perspective.
It makes you wonder if that happens in other organizations too. Like,
Sure.
are we really creating spaces where everyone feels comfortable sharing their ideas?
Yeah.
Or are we maybe unintentionally silencing those voices
Yeah.
because of, hierarchy or assumptions about who should be speaking up?
Yeah, and that's what I think is so inspiring about Van Persie is that he doesn't just complain about the system.
Right.
He actually tries to change it by sharing his knowledge and insights, even though he isn't a coach.
I mean, he could easily just enjoy his retirement and keep all that to himself.
Exactly.
But he chooses to, give back.
He tells this great story about Marco van Basten,
Oh, yeah. Well,
who gave him this advice, give to give, not give to get.
I love that.
Right.
It's such a powerful way to think about things.
Yeah. Instead of thinking about what you'll get in return,
Right.
just be genuinely generous.
And it's not just about being nice or whatever.
No.
Van Persie actually argues that this approach makes you a better player,
Yeah.
a better coach, a better leader.
You have to keep learning and growing to stay ahead.
Right. It's like that protege effect, I think they call it.
Mm-hmm.
Studies have shown that when we teach others, we actually learn the material better ourselves.
Yeah, you have to really think it through.
Yeah.
So for Van Persie, it's not just about taming that inner fire.
Right.
It's about taking that energy and doing something positive with it.
He's showing a different kind of leadership,
Yeah.
humble, but also courageous, admitting his weaknesses, learning from others, and challenging the status quo.
And I think that's the big takeaway here.
Yeah.
It's a call to action for all of us, no matter what we do.
It really makes you think, how can we be more generous?
Right.
How can we create more collaborative environments?
Yeah.
And how can we challenge those power structures that might be holding us back?
Big questions. But what's so cool about Van Persie's story is that it shows even small acts of generosity.
Yeah.
Like sharing information or speaking up can make a difference.
We all have the power to create positive change.
Let's take a moment to gather our thoughts. And in part 3, we'll look at how we can take these ideas from Van Persie's story and actually apply them to our own lives, our careers, our relationships. We've been talking about this really inspiring interview with Robin Van Persie, how he went from this impulsive player to a real thoughtful leader.
Yeah.
And we've uncovered some key things along the way, like self-awareness, communication, challenging the norms. But how do we actually take all that and apply it to our own lives?
Right. It's easy to get inspired, but then actually doing something is the hard part.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing that stood out to me was how much Van Persie talked about self-reflection. He didn't just change overnight.
Yeah.
He took time to understand his behavior, how it affected him and everyone around him.
And he wasn't afraid to ask for help either. Like that conversation with his wife, that was huge. She gives him this analogy about choosing your battles, and it completely changes his perspective.
Sometimes we need someone else to point those things out to us.
Yeah, we're too close to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a good place to start. Like, what are some small things we're doing that might actually be holding us back?
I like that. What are some things that are draining our energy?
Yeah. Are there any patterns in our behavior that are causing, unnecessary stress or conflict?
It could be something small, like always interrupting people in meetings.
Yeah.
Or checking your phone when you should be focusing.
Right. We all have those little quirks.
Yeah. But sometimes those quirks can really affect our effectiveness.
Once you figure out those things, then you can think about how to apply that choose your battles idea that Van Persie talked about.
So it's not about being passive, or letting people take advantage.
It's about being strategic with your energy.
Right. Asking yourself, is this really worth fighting for?
Exactly.
Can I let this go without compromising, my values?
And what about communication? Van Persie really emphasized that too.
Yeah. Could a simple conversation stop a small problem from turning into a huge one?
Definitely something to think about.
He also talked about being more open to sharing our knowledge and skills.
Even if you're not like a manager or anything.
Yeah. What are you really good at?
Right. What unique insights do you have?
Maybe you could teach someone a new skill.
Yeah.
Or mentor someone on your team.
And don't forget the power of asking questions. Van Persie learned so much just by being curious. Asking questions, even the silly ones.
Right. And being open to other people's viewpoints.
It's all about continuous learning and growth. even when you're already an expert.
Yeah, always be learning. And finally, remember how Van Persie talked about challenging those power structures?
hmm
How can we make our workplaces and our communities more collaborative and inclusive?
It might mean speaking up when you see something wrong,
Yeah.
or fighting for policies that give everyone a voice,
Maybe even stepping into a leadership role yourself.
even if it seems scary.
Right, because Van Persie's story reminds us that leadership isn't about titles.
No, it's
It's
not.
about being yourself, speaking your truth, and encouraging others to do the same.
Love that.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive on Robin Van Persie, I want to leave you with a challenge.
Right.
What's one small step you can take today to apply all this to your own life?
Yeah.
Is there a battle you can let go of?
What can you share?
What question can you ask?
Remember, even those small actions can have a big impact.
They create a ripple effect. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.